Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the October 2nd, 2018 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my pleasure to call tonight's meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room on the shelves. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to pick up a copy of our agenda and you can follow along with tonight's proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to the items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment under item 5, which is reserved for public comments of the general nature. At that portion of the evening, any residents here in the audience or anyone here in the audience who has any questions or comments of the general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, we would welcome you to please come up to the podium, let us know who you are, and we'd welcome hearing from you. But first, it is our proud tradition to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so I ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us. And with that, I would like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace? Here. Commissioner Earl? Here. Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here, thank you very much. It takes us to item 3, which pertains to approval of minutes from prior council meetings. We have 2 sets of minutes to review and approve tonight. Those would be our minutes from our executive session from September 4th and September 11th, 2018, as well as our regular village council meeting minutes from our September 18th, 2018 meeting. If there are no questions, comments, concerns, changes, or corrections, I would welcome and invite a motion to approve, please.
Martello, I move the council approve the executive session minutes from September 4th and September 11th, and the regular meeting minutes from September 18th, all as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is the mayor's report. We moved the mayor's report up tonight in order to express how deeply saddened the community of Downers Grove and beyond is over the recent passing of our very dear friend who was a pillar of our community, Linda Kunze. Linda was literally the hub on which the wheel of the downtown turned progressively for 2 decades. Linda was a warm, caring, magnanimous person who everybody knew, and even people that she didn't know knew her, because she always was welcoming and receptive to both residents, strangers, and visitors alike. She was synonymous and always will be synonymous with treasured downtown activities like the Friday night car show, the downtown market, the Santa parade and tree lighting ceremony, Girls' Day Out, the Downtown Fine Arts Festival, and many, many more. Her legacy is a large and a long one and will not be forgotten in this community. The outpouring of sympathy for Linda's family by this community has been appropriately and not surprisingly beyond measure. In this modern age, we tend to gauge things by social media, and Linda was very cognizant of social media with respect to promoting the downtown, so I find it very appropriate to share some statistics with you. As I said, she knew everybody, and everybody knew her, even people who she didn't know. On a Facebook post that was put up about her untimely and sudden passing about a week ago, since that time there have been over 300 reactions from members of Downers Grove and beyond. Almost 100 comments expressing sympathy at her loss, and 30 shares. In the 8 years that I've been mayor, there has never been a social media post that has received that much attention and connection with others that I can imagine. And it's a testament to how much of a part of the fabric of this community Linda Kunze was and will be, and always will be. Together with Linda's family, the Downtown Management Corporation Board and the Village of Downers Grove are working to select a location in downtown to be named for and dedicated to Linda Kunze in recognition of the indelible mark that she left on the cornerstone of our community. The announcement regarding the location, the details for the dedication ceremony will be coming soon. Until then, let this video entitled Downtown Then and Now serve as a poignant reminder of Linda's accomplishments and her legacy and her impact on our community and future generations.
Since rising from the prairie 185 years ago, downtown Downers Grove has always been evolving. Like many suburban town centers in the 70s and 80s, changing patterns led people and money to other places. So in 1997, the village changed the course of the downtown by creating a financing tool to improve its infrastructure and encourage private investment. These improvements began to attract new businesses and development. And slowly, the downtown started to change. In the last 20 years, commercial space has grown by 69%, residential units by 89%. And downtown property values have grown by over 300%. The future of downtown Downers Grove is bright and continues to attract new businesses and development. You can learn more about plans for the downtown at downers.us.
It is tremendously satisfying to know that Linda was able to see all that she oversaw and accomplished in Downers Grove, as it truly is a testament to her. She was one of our finest citizens. I'd like to ask everyone present to please give us a moment of silence in honor of Linda Kunze. Thank you. Of course, our thoughts and our prayers are with Linda and her family during this difficult time. We say to each of them, thank you for sharing Linda with us and the community. She has made an incredible impact upon everything that we have today in the downtown, which will be recognized and appreciated for generations to come. Thank you. The other item I'd like to do on tonight's mayor's report is I do have a proclamation. And appropriately, it was one of Linda's favorite topics, fine arts. So on a lighter note, I would like to read the following proclamation and then present it to Robin Treiloff, who's here tonight to receive it on behalf of the Arts DuPage Advisory Committee. Whereas the arts, culture, and humanities are the embodiment of all things beautiful and entertaining in the world, the enduring record of human achievement. And whereas the arts, culture, and humanities enhance every aspect of life in Downers Grove. Whereas we use the humanities, history, literature, philosophy, to explore what it means to be human. Whereas the arts, culture, and humanities play a unique and intrinsically valuable role in the lives of our families. And whereas the month of October has been recognized as Arts DuPage Month by Arts DuPage and the arts and cultural organizations in all the communities within DuPage County. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim October 2018 as Arts DuPage Month in the Village of Downers Grove and call upon all citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in the Village of Downers Grove. I'd like to invite up, as mentioned, Robin Treiloff, who is a member of the Arts DuPage Advisory Committee, co-leader of the Art Department in Downers Grove, and a board member of the Downers Grove Public Library Foundation to please accept this proclamation. And if you'd like to say a few words, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank you for this recognition, not only of Arts DuPage Month, but of the valuable role that the arts play in the quality of our lives in Downers Grove. All those present watching and hearing about this who are arts supporters, I know are going to be greatly appreciative of this formal recognition of something that's so important to us all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for promoting this in our community. I'd like to now move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is previously advertised is reserved for public comments of a general nature. So if there are any members of the audience here today who would like to make any comments or ask any questions of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come to the podium, let us know who you are, and we'd welcome hearing from you. Good evening, Mr. Swimmer.
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I'd just like to start by echoing everything you said about Linda Kunze. I've known her for 20 years, and even when she was sick about 10 years ago and she had lost a lot of weight, you'd see her on the street and she'd always smile and say, "Hi, George, how you doing? What's going on?" When I heard she passed, I was in shock. She's just a sweet, nice, loving person that always had, you know, if you had a problem, she'd try to solve it for you. If you had a question, she'd answer it for you. And to her family, you were blessed to have her, and I'm sorry you lost her. I'd like to just kind of give you a little background of who I am, and because some of the council members don't know who I am. Many years ago, I ran for state representative. I ran with Patty Bullock in the primary. I ran in the primary with Patty Bullock, Pat Trowbridge, and Brian Krajewski. I lost. I came in 4th in the primary. Brian came in 3rd. Patty Bullock won, and Patty and I are good friends, and I wished her well that night, and that's that. And so then Brian became mayor of Downers Grove maybe 2 or 4 years afterwards. And one of my things, when I was running for in the primary, was I wanted grade separation in Downers Grove at the railroad crossing. That meant that there would be either an overpass or an underpass at one of the crossings. Shortly afterwards, that Brian was elected mayor, he came up with the Belmont Underpass Task Force, and he was gracious enough to invite me to be on it. And at the first meeting, I think there was maybe 3 or 4 people. I think it was Patty Bullock maybe, and State Senator Bev Faywell, who I happen to know fairly well at the time, and maybe Rick Jennings, who was the village manager at the time. And it took a number of years, but we just were able to grab the funding, and we were able to get the plans in place, and finally the ground was broken, and now we have an underpass at Belmont Avenue. And you ask anybody about that underpass, and they say, wow, it's like the best thing that ever happened in Downers Grove. And I agree with them. And the mayor was there, I think, at the groundbreaking. It wasn't the groundbreaking, I think it was when they actually had the opening, and the governor was there, and it was just a remarkably nice day. And the mayor was gracious enough to thank me for my efforts, and I appreciated it. So then we were talking about additional grade separation, and some members on this council were involved in it. There's some members in the council that weren't involved in it. And a plan was brought up, and it was sent to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission, you know, I thank people that volunteer. I thank you for your time. You're basically doing volunteer work. I thank the Planning Commission, but they didn't have a clue about an underpass. They didn't realize how important it was, not only for safety, but for just traffic in general. There's been a number of fatalities in Downers Grove over the last 25 years I've been involved in railroad safety. I think, in my opinion, the only viable way to have grade separation in the downtown area is to raise the track bed, similar to what they have in Oak Park, along that line in Oak Park. And that plan actually came about probably 60 years ago, the village of Downers Grove has a copy of that plan, where they were actually raising the track bed, and it would be a natural underpass for cars, any vehicle. We have a level 1 trauma center just down the street on Main Street where ambulances have to wait because train traffic is increasing almost on a yearly basis. Now we have close to 200 trains a day traverse back and forth, and many of those trains are during the rush hour period. So what I'm here tonight to do, and the Planning Commission shot it down. There was one younger member on the Planning Commission that said we have to do something about the traffic. But as far as the safety goes and the traffic goes, the Parking Commission basically shot it down. I never heard another word about it. So what I'm going to ask Mayor Tully to do, and I think if anything ever comes about it, and there is grade separation, that when council members, if they're involved in it, just from the initial start, they're going to wind up telling their children about it or their grandchildren about it. They're going to take a little bit of pride when they use it. I know I take pride when I use the Belmont underpass. And my wife knows it. If I never accomplish anything, just playing a little part in accomplishing that gives me a tremendous amount of satisfaction. So I'm going to ask the mayor to appoint a special task force to see if we could do something as far as some kind of grade separation in Downers Grove. I think the best possible approach would be to go back to a plan that came about 60 years ago, give or take, about raising the track bed. So I'm going to ask the mayor, I know he's not going to be on the council much longer, to maybe appoint a few people to see where we could go with it. I could certainly suggest some names. Liz Chaplin on the county board, I know her very well. Kirk Dillard, I know Kirk fairly well. Patty Bellick, she was involved with it before. I know she's not really in politics anymore. She would be happy to do it. Dr. Lanny Wilson from the DuPage Railroad Safety Council, I know he would be very happy to do it. As a matter of fact, to just mention about the DuPage Railroad Safety Council, last week we had a meeting in Oak Brook. Every 2 years we have a meeting where we invite a number of speakers, a number of people from the public sector, firemen, police officers. We had about 150 people there at the meeting. One of the speakers was the administrator from the Federal Railroad Administration. And I'm just going to give you kind of an insight of how railroad accidents impact people. So Dr. Lanny Wilson, who's chairman of the DuPage Railroad Safety Council, and has been since it began almost 25 years ago, his daughter was killed at Monroe Street. The son was driving a car, went around the gates, a Metro train hit the car, the daughter died, and the son lived. He was hurt bad, but he did live. And from that, the DuPage Railroad Safety Council got started, and I was one of the initial members. So we have these meetings every 2 years, and we meet on a monthly basis, but every 2 years we have like this big meeting where we invite a number of speakers. And 2 years ago we had the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, so that's a big name. This year we had the administrator for the Federal Railroad Administration there, the administrator. So he's like the guy in charge of the whole country. So Lanny came to one of the meetings and he announced who the speaker was. And you could almost feel the tension in the air. He was very emotional. And he says, I just found out that the administrator for the Federal Railroad Administration, his daughter was in school as a freshman when Lanny's daughter was killed. They were both at Hinsdale Central High School. So anyways, that's that. And I also like to just mention one other thing in passing. So George Graves was the police chief in Downers Grove for a number of years, and many of you may know George. George is in the DuPage Railroad Safety Council also. I like to think maybe I got him started in it, but maybe not. But he was police chief when I was just basically starting out in railroad safety. So about 3-4 years ago, George Graves, and he's still very involved with law enforcement and chiefs of police and various associations. He started something called Railroad Safety Week, which is in September. It just ended. It was in September. He started. So our group touted it, tried to tout it, but he really was the main player in it. So a couple of years ago, it was like in 3 or 4 states. Now it's a national event. So that was started by George Graves. I won't go into the many tragedies we have had in Downers Grove, but we've had too many, and I just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Swimmer. Good to see you as always. And I was aware of the DuPage Railroad Safety Council's Prevent Tragedies on the Tracks forum that took place in Oak Brook last week. I know there were members from a lot of different communities in DuPage County that were there. You and I have had this conversation many times, and it's a big undertaking, and there's a lot of challenges, both logistical, financial, political, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean we should not try. And frankly, the timing might be better now than it was on prior occasions when you and I have talked about this. If they're to believe the General Assembly and both gubernatorial candidates are talking about capital dollars that haven't been around in a long time for infrastructure, public safety, and transportation, who knows? There might be some opportunities that haven't existed since the Belmont Underpass. And you'll recall that almost didn't happen because of a lot of circumstances. So maybe the time has come. And certainly as part of any project that would straighten out the crossing at Washington and Burlington would be a start. That the intersection of trains, cars, and pedestrians has always raised the hair on the back of my neck as a commuter. So certainly looking at something like that as part of a broader review, the time might be appropriate. So I'll definitely see what I can do.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because there might be something almost immediately you could do. What happens at the intersection that you indicated is that Metro trains will stop, they'll let off passengers, the passengers will cross Burlington, and the cars will be stopped on the tracks waiting for the passengers to cross the street. And there's not usually, but a lot of times there's a backup of cars on the tracks waiting for passengers to clear the crossing. I don't know if signage would work, but there's got to be, and it was mentioned at one of our meetings by a local resident who's also part of our group, that cars cannot go on that crossing when Metro trains let off passengers and those passengers are crossing, because they just wind up on that crossing, and sooner or later a car is going to get hit by a train. So with that said, thank you.
No, understood. And I also know that the barriers that were put up not too long ago at that crossing are routinely ignored by the pedestrians, which you can do all the safety measures in the world, but if people won't participate in their own survival, it's a difficult challenge. But as I said, the timing may be a better timing for something like that than it has been in a long, long time. So thank you for being here and for sharing that. Any other questions or comments of a public nature from members of the audience? Questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? Very good. Well, hearing that there are no further, we'll move on to our consent agenda, which is item 6. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Bertelli, I move the council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Any questions from members of the village council on any of those items? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 7, our active agenda. We have no items on tonight's active agenda. I have a feeling that won't be true for the next number of meetings. So we'll go right to item 8, which is our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is a portion of our meeting where items are presented by staff for discussion and consideration purposes only. No formal action will be taken at this time. Typically, what we do is ask our Fine Village manager, David Fieldman, to present the item, either personally or through one of the members of our Fine Village staff. And the council will usually ask questions or ask for more information, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for any questions or comments that you may have before coming back to the council. And with that, good evening, Mr. Fieldman.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Thank you for the wonderful introduction and welcome. On tonight's first reading agenda, we have 3 items. The first item is an ordinance amending certain stormwater provisions. This ordinance amends the regulations for managing stormwater runoff for residential development projects. As you know, this is a Village Council priority action item, which has been thoroughly reviewed and discussed by the Village Council for about a year, and it actually was reviewed by one of our boards and commissions a year before that. So we've been working on this project for about 2 years now. This ordinance reflects direction provided by the council at the September 11th Village Council meeting. It requires all new houses and additions of 400 square feet or more of footprint expansion to provide on-site stormwater storage. It also requires new sump pumps to discharge into either a storage area or an infiltration system. The ordinance, as we discussed at the last couple of meetings, substantially achieves both project objectives. Number 1, reduce the negative impacts of stormwater runoff. And number 2, accommodate residential renovation and redevelopment. Now, the details of the required storage volumes, the estimated cost to comply with the ordinance, and the overall effectiveness of the regulations are included in the staff report that was published on Friday. They are exactly the same as the detailed discussion we had on September 11th. So at this point, staff is happy to answer any questions or to further present any ideas that the council would like more information on.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go right to my colleagues and see if there's any other questions or comments. Clearly, we've been talking about this for quite some time, and in some respects, we may be at a Goldilocks moment. Questions or comments? Can't let that one go, Commissioner Barnett.
All right, Mayor, I'll jump in. I support this as a logical next step. You may recall that the last round, last version we had, one of the hesitations I had was that I thought it struck an improper balance. Balance is going to be our goal here, and we never really will seek it, or we never really will find it, rather. But the last one felt a little bit like we were putting too much public burden on private development. This feels a little bit more like a focus on net change, compensatory storage, as opposed to providing really additions to our system. And I'd like to see us implement it, and like any other ordinance we implement, we'll gauge it as we go and adjust if necessary. But I think it ticks off an awful lot of the boxes of our objectives in a manageable way. So I'm fully in support of it and hope we can implement it properly.
And thank you, Commissioner. Just to pick up on that, speaking of adjusting things as time goes by and you have experience in the field, we've certainly done that in the past with other stormwater and redevelopment related ordinances. If we see reason for a change or adjustment, we've certainly hesitated to do that. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to thank staff for all their hard work in trying to get us through this web. And my colleagues, I'd like to thank them. All the meetings we've had, all the discussions. We can't change topography, we can't change soil. We want to do the right thing for the residents, and it wasn't simple. If it was about a year, it seemed like every week or 2 meetings out of a month we were talking stormwater, and a lot of us came in with very original ideas and things that we wanted to see, and we had to make a lot of concessions in realizing how tough this was to do. And it's appreciated. I can support this. And we'll just, I just know stormwater will be back and back and back because it's a tough nut to crack, so. But I will support this, and good luck with the success of what we're trying to do here. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know how many times I've heard from residents in all corners of the village. Boy, my stormwater problems weren't bad until the big house up the street went up, or the 5 big houses up the street went up. And I think this is a good step toward alleviating that concern. Obviously, this is not a problem that can be solved overnight. We do kind of live in almost the bottom of the bowl, really, in the village, as the mayor has described. If we could have had Pierce Downer locate someplace else, we all might be better off from a stormwater perspective. But this is a good step. We have a lot more to do, but I look forward to supporting this. I want to thank staff. We sent you guys back to the drawing board several times on this, but I think we've finally gotten a good solution here to this portion of it. So I look forward to voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I'll just add that this has taken a lot of work, and we really appreciate all the input from various perspectives in the community to try to strike what we hope is a feasible and balanced solution, understanding that one cannot let perfect get in the way of good, and we can make adjustments going forward. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions or comments from members of the audience. I'm stunned by the silence. Any final questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Fine, hearing none. Thank you for presenting that item. We'll move on to the next one. And when will we expect these to come forward for a vote? Next week?
Yes.
October 9th? Very good.
Just a quick thank you to a couple of residential home builders in the audience tonight who provided some informal feedback to staff throughout the process, so thank you. Appreciate that. The next item is an ordinance amending some parking restrictions, so our Public Works Director, Nan Newland, is here to present background information on this item.
Good evening, Ms. Newland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have an item, it's amending some traffic regulations in the downtown. There's 3 major components to it. The first 2 are related to parking adjacent to 2 new developments in the downtown. As part of these developments, their approved plans show the construction of additional parking to our downtown. This parking will be regulated in such a way that there will be public parking components as well as loading zones and zones for drop-offs and pickups at each of the locations. These restrictions were included as part of the approved plan, so this is really paperwork to include this in the ordinance so it can be enforced. That will include at the 5100 Forest site on 3 15-minute spaces on Forest and some 3-hour and loading zones on Gilbert. And then on Maple Avenue on the north side, just east of Main Street, there's going to be a loading zone as well as 2-hour parking. The third part of this ordinance includes a language that will allow for the enforcement of construction parking that is not parked in places that are part of the approved parking plan for that development. So it'll be able to strengthen the village's ability to enforce parking outside of that approved parking plan. Those are the 3 elements of the ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? I'm glad that these are coming forward because it means the project's getting close to being done. And we have heard a lot of concerns voiced by members of the public with respect to construction parking, which obviously at some point in time will dissipate on its own. But I'm glad that we're taking steps to increase our ability to enforce that. Thank you. And last but not least,
Item C at our first reading agenda is the first of many discussions about the proposed FY 2019 municipal budget. Tonight, I just want to provide a very brief overview of the 19 budget. The budget, as proposed, was published on our website on September 21st, and we do have copies available at the Downers Grove Library. This is the first of 8 meetings that will be opportunities for public discussion. The actual presentation of the general fund and all the other funds in the budget will be coming up starting next week and will run all the way through. Really, the budget process runs through the middle of December for those 8 meetings. So every council meeting from now until the middle of December. Now, our staff traditionally prepares a nice 8 or 10 slide PowerPoint presentation, and it's really good. The council has heard it many times, and as good as our slide presentation is, we turned Doug Kozlowski and Chris Durlow loose on a video, and they were able to hit the high points and the key points of the FY19 budget in 46 seconds, and it's much more entertaining than me reading slides. So in lieu of the presentation, I thought we would enjoy a quick video.
By all means.
The village has just delivered the proposed 2019 budget. It's ready for review at downers.us. Inside, you'll find a balanced general fund with revenues and expenses of $48 million. For the 8th year in a row, there's no increase in the property tax levy for village operations. However, an increase in the levy is required by state law for public safety pensions. The proposed budget includes a net reduction of more than 3 full-time staff positions. You'll also discover a commitment to continued infrastructure investment with more than $24 million included for streets, stormwater, and water system improvements. Join the budget discussions during the council meetings starting October 2nd at Village Hall. See you there.
Nice work on the video from our team. I also just wanted to say, and the council's heard this before, there are very few new concepts or surprises in the FY19 budget, which is why we can introduce it with such a snappy little video. The reason there's no surprises is because this budget is the product of not only our long-range plan that we do every summer, but many other plans prepared and approved by the village council spanning several years. It's usually about this time that we joke that the budget writes itself. But of course, we know that's not true. The budget does not write itself. This budget is the product and the annual implementation of council directions and directives provided over many, many years. And that's why our budget is so concise and so predictable and so effective. So that's just a brief overview of the 2019 budget. We will start with the fund presentations with the general fund and related funds next week. If you have any questions at this time, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Dave. And just to pick up on your introduction of the FY 2019 budget for next year, it really is the culmination of a long process and a lot of hard work by a lot of different people over the course of many years, focused on one thing, or a couple of important things. One is figuring out how to leverage lean practices, innovation, creativity, collaboration in order to achieve what is a remarkable accomplishment, 8 years in a row, not to have any increase in the property tax levy for village operations is truly remarkable. That is not easy to do, and yet somehow, some way, the staff here continues to deliver that every single year. Truly a remarkable accomplishment that I think the community is very grateful for when you look around and see all the competing pressures on the limited amount of resources that both residents and local governments have. So thank you very much for that work. And it's this council and prior councils, many people had a hand in it, but it really is now a direction and a philosophy as opposed to an ask, and that is what we're looking at as the product of that. The other thing I want to point out is there is truly an evolution in transparency and accountability in the budget process itself. Not only has the village budget been the recipient of numerous awards from outside organizations for its composition, but some of us up here will remember the days when the budget was like the old New York City phone book, and as dense and as difficult to follow. And it would take many, many meetings and a lot of conversations to get to a point. And that whole process has become far more transparent and engaging with residents, where there is a high level of understanding and appreciation and confidence in the budget process, which again does not happen overnight. It's something that's built over many years and over many individuals and over many council members. So that is to be celebrated as well. And maintaining a AAA bond rating is of utmost importance to local governments, more so now today than ever before. So thank you very much, is all I have to say on behalf of my colleagues, which I know they can speak for themselves, but I'm sure they'll join me in thanking staff and on behalf of the community, because it's truly a remarkable accomplishment, something that should be celebrated. And now we'll get into all the questions that we have about all the things we don't like, but that's next week.
Yes.
Other questions or comments from members of the council?
Nothing I don't like.
All right. Very good, thank you. Oh, well, hold on a second. My apologies. Any questions or comments on the introduction from members of the audience? The sneak preview. Good news, balanced budget, no property increase for operations, and $24 million on infrastructure. That sounds pretty good.
And with that, that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. That then brings us to the manager's report. Item 9, right back to you, Mr. Fieldman.
Yes, one item on tonight's manager's report. It is listed as an informational item, but we are seeking village council direction on a very important issue related to our facilities sustainability plan. As the council knows, the village's current plan to address well-documented village facility issues is to reevaluate options for the replacement of the police station and the replacement of the village hall with a new building in conjunction with a private sector development, which helps pay for those improvements. This reevaluation would begin as planned in the summer of 2019. But last week, the village received an offer from Location Finders International to purchase a portion of our Civic Center property for $8 million. LFI would redevelop the site with a DuPage Medical Group facility pursuant to and as shown basically in their 2017 proposal, which was reviewed and discussed publicly. LFI's written offer is included with the staff report, which is found on the village website, and staff is seeking village council direction on how to respond to this offer and what our next steps in our facilities planning efforts should be to help with the discussion and potential policy direction. We have identified 4 options which the council can consider, and they are also enumerated in the staff report. That's a little bit of background information on this, Mayor, and with that, I would like to just simply hand it back to you, Mayor Tully, for any further discussion.
Thank you. This is certainly a unexpectedly pleasant development. And obviously, this is something we've struggled with, and we just got done with one very difficult Gordian knot that we were able to somehow untie, stormwater regulations in our community. I'm hopeful that we can untie another Gordian knot and solve another long-standing challenge in our community. But I would love to hear what my colleagues think and see if there's something that we can pursue here, even if it's to find out more about what options there are for unwinding the knot. So I'm sorry?
I'll go if you want.
Go. Commissioner White.
Okay. It's very interesting to see this offer. If we go back in time to April of 2017, at that point, there are a number of options. Let me back a little bit. I remain convinced that the non-financial considerations make the so-called townhome option the best option. However, we can't make our decisions solely on non-financial reasons. In April of 2017, my assessment of the present value of the offers showed that the townhome options was slightly higher than that version of the LFI offer. And because the non-financial attributes clearly and strongly favor the townhomes, I made a motion that we proceed with townhomes. It wasn't seconded. I was the only one willing to go on record saying I was ready to go right then. And we didn't go forward. At this point, however, $8 million in cash tips the scales on the financial versus non-financial. And it's just the present value of this current offer. I think there's been a slight rise in interest rates, which affects the value of payment streams. I haven't done all the math yet, but I'm pretty comfortable that this offer is now financially better by a significant amount than the townhome offer. And while emotionally, I think townhomes fit best with what we want, we really need to take a serious look at this. So I'm inclined for option B, to direct staff to go forward and gain more information. Now, I've heard that people are interested in gaining more information about whether various townhome developers, maybe not just the one we spoke to before, are willing to sort of raise their bid as well. If others want to do that, I won't stand in the way of that, and depending on how those numbers come in. But a year and a half ago, I was willing to give this more time. The police need facilities, and we can't let this screw around all that much longer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. When we did the RFP and we had the process that Commissioner White referred to, the DuPage Medical Group offer was not my preferred offer. My biggest concern was financial. I wanted to make sure that we solve the facilities challenges that we face in the most fiscally responsible way possible with the least impact on our taxpayers. At the time, that was not the DuPage Medical Group offer. With this revised offer that was, as the manager noted, unsolicited, my concerns are met. Some of the other concerns that were voiced back in early 2017 had to do with density and the impact of the development on the surrounding neighborhood, and I think this solves those concerns. It brings in additional customers during the day for downtown businesses, unlocks the economic development potential of a good portion of this land here in our downtown area, and in my mind, that makes it a win all the way around. Like Commissioner White, I'm in favor of option B. I think we should negotiate the key terms of an agreement and take the deal that's in front of us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody who's followed me, I'm a strong believer in process, and I don't think you leave process for expediency, but I do think you vary process when it is detrimental. And I was shocked last year when there was an outrage over a medical office building coming in with $1 million more in the middle of the process. I actually wasn't angry about it. I thought if somebody's willing to offer the taxpayers of this village an extra $1 million, I'm all for it. The last process had flawed choices, and I think it justifiably failed. But we did learn several things from the process. First off, the public was emphatic that they didn't want more buildings and more density, tall buildings and more density in our downtown. So no more population challenges to our downtown. That was number one. The townhomes appear to be the best suggested land use, and I agree with that. But the offer that was given at the time was only half an offer. They would build half, and maybe they would build the other half. So it was flawed. But townhomes are the preferred land use. The medical office building was okay, but it fell financially short. And so the idea that medical buildings were going to go away, or something was going to happen, they were going to fail, I think that was nonsense. I think they're here for a long time to stay. And looking at the number of people who are at my age and like, I don't see them going away anytime soon. Also, there was discussion that a medical office building could be repurposed into an office building if it did change hands, and that was likewise false. However, I think there's something we can do with the present offer through the use of special use and other requirements that we could make this an attractive building and useful for our downtown. It's financially much more feasible. We have a proposal that exceeds the previous proposals. I think it's now financially feasible, and it doesn't include high density. The cost of demolition and special use features make future challenges, they can be addressed. I think we need to move forward with the facilities. We do need a police station. We talk about our budget and how we're trying to maintain our service levels. When you call the police, you want them there, and they need facilities badly. So I think we need to move quickly. I believe we should continue the process with LFI as quickly as possible, getting the word out to the other entities that submitted bids, other townhome builders, that if they're interested in meeting the offer or bettering the offer, I think staff should get the word out. We don't have to go through a 60-day or whatever process, RFP process. just get out there and get the word out and see if anything shakes. If not, I'm perfectly happy to go through with the LFI. I guess in the choices, mine would be the last one, is to have further conversations with LFI and keep things open for a minimal amount of time to see if there's anything else out there that could match or better the current offer. Otherwise, I'm willing to go ahead. Thanks.
Could I interject, Mayor? I just want to make sure I understand, Commissioner Waldeck. Are you saying you want to pursue the second option and the fourth option simultaneously?
Yeah.
Negotiate with LFI while we are informally seeking offers from only townhouse developers?
Correct. It's kind of a mixed bag, but hey, you know, if somebody comes up with another million or better land use, I'm all for it.
Your Amazon's looking for somewhere to go.
Squeeze.
Look at my $14 an hour.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions from the council, comments? Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I won't repeat the positive attributes some of my colleagues touched on. I did think this was a good idea a year or so ago. I continue to think so. I think beyond some of the things already stated, I think it is an amenity that would add value to our community for a host of reasons. So in my mind, this idea that was a good plan a year ago is now $4 million better. I'd like to just move expeditiously on it. Option B is where my land right now, and I think this could be a very good thing for our community. The problems are not going away, as we've all said, and councils forever have struggled with this. Not forever, but certainly for probably 15 years. I don't think we've had an opportunity like this, and I think we should take advantage of it right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Earl?
Well, this came as a bit of a surprise. We weren't out there looking for it, but I did say that 2 years ago, that we needed to wait at least 2 years so that these buildings could come to fruition, the ones that were being built, and then we would see how the public felt about that and where we were ready to go and when these buildings were filled. Both of these, two of the three buildings are not yet complete. But of all the options 2 years ago that we looked at, townhouses were my preferred option, hands down. And I believe it is a preferred land use. I do believe that the density that was proposed with the townhouses, and this being a prime transit-oriented development site, that townhouses are the way to go. I would lean towards continuing the current plan till the spring, as there are some elections coming up, and that could change things mid-cycle with this. But barring that, if you want to go ahead with something, I did not agree that a medical building was the preferred choice for this site. I don't feel that throwing even more money at it makes it a whole lot better, because it very well may be there for a long time to come. And that wasn't what we had earmarked for this site. However, if everyone wants to go out for bid for townhouses, because that seemed to be the preferred option, if everyone wants to go out and look at townhouses and solicit multiple townhouse offers, I can go along with that. I don't have a problem with that. But that is my preferred development for this site, and that's how I feel about it. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace, how are you tonight?
I'm well, Mayor. Thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I'm going to be honest in saying that when this offer came to us, I was a bit leery. It seemed very sudden. It seemed to be a greater amount being offered. However, while I didn't feel that the right time to do facilities was when it came up before, I do feel that now is the right time. So in the end, I believe option B is going to be our best option. I've always said that I'm open to investigating and researching. Again, to clarify, option B does not obligate us to approve any type of redevelopment. It's simply gathering more information, which I feel like is always beneficial. I do have a question for our village attorney. Is the village at any type of risk because of previous people that provided previous offers not being able to re-offer?
No.
No, okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Just to clarify with Commissioner Wallace, when you say option B, it's to direct staff to negotiate the terms of, okay, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I apologize, I probably should have set the context for this before, because some time has passed since we last spoke about this. And to sort of explain my reasoning, where I'm going to end up, it does need a little bit of context, but it'd probably also be helpful to the audience and people at home as well. Our objective here is not to redevelop some land. We just happen to have some land that we want to redevelop. That's not the objective. The objective is to solve a long-standing, grossly overdue facilities challenge that our community has. Our police station has been obsolete for I don't know how long. It's come up in numerous CALEA certifications. There's no question that it needs to be replaced and modernized, period. It needs a new building. This village hall is also suffering great amounts of maintenance and repair work because it is also obsolete, and at some point in time, the amount of money it will cost you to maintain something, when you have diminishing returns in the usefulness of that asset, it's better to replace the asset, and we are at that point with both of those buildings, no question about it. So we have been discussing, this council and prior councils, how do we pay for that? One way to pay for it would be to simply spend money we have. Another option would be to go out for a bond and borrow money. Another option would be to raise taxes. A lot of different ways to pay for those two buildings and those facilities, which are needed for long-term benefit of this community, both today and for many generations in the future. But as we talked about earlier, our staff has been very good about figuring out how to do more with less, and rather than raising taxes or generating, putting an additional burden on the community in terms of what they have to do to pay for it, how can we leverage other assets we have in order to pay for something without raising taxes? So the reason why we've been looking at a development is to create a funding source for the replacement of two key buildings in our community, Village Hall and the police station. That's why we're looking at talking about redeveloping the village campus, where we're all sitting right now, through some sort of redevelopment, and then the creation of a tax increment financing district that would generate revenue through the increment that would pay the debt service for building those two buildings, with the idea, ultimately, ideally, to minimize the impact upon the community. So while the cost might be X, what the community actually pays for it would be far less, because we would be creating a funding source through the increment in the tax increment financing district that would be created through the new development. Basically, you create a source that will pay for or minimize the cost of the project. That's the idea, that's the concept. And I don't think anybody has a problem with that concept. The question has been, what are the details? So we looked at, a while back, different proposals that came to us for, well, what would you build here that would generate that revenue that would pay the debt service on these two new buildings, so as to minimize the impact upon the community. And we received three basic options. One was to build a bunch of apartment buildings, another was to build some townhomes, another one was to build a medical office building. And those were the basic things that were before us. And my thinking back then was, again, given what the objective here is, the objective here is to replace our facilities and minimize the impact upon the taxpayers. My concern with the medical facility last time was the financial gap that existed. It was not going to minimize as much as I would have liked the financial burden on the taxpayers. It would have gone a long way towards that, but there were others that went farther. So I'm very intrigued by this current offer for a number of reasons. Number one, that gap is very different than before, because the dollars up front are significantly more than they were last time. So that takes that issue, in my mind, off the table in terms of being reluctant to pursue negotiation. And Commissioner Wallace is right, we're talking about a negotiation here, not signing anything. Number two, as Commissioner Earl said, we had the benefit of the passage of time. We talked about this a while ago, and time has passed, and we've had the opportunity for input, experience, discussions with the community. We've been able to witness other things going on in our town. We've, in our own way, have already spoken in terms of some of what the development should be in the downtown through recently adopting new zoning rules for the downtown in terms of height, density, and whatnot. And that process allowed us to receive a lot of input from the community as to what the community's feel was in terms of downtown development. We had the benefit of that we didn't have a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the other thing that I find attractive about this use is the logistical aspects. One of the things that concerned me last time about a residential building or buildings were things such as phasing, the relocation of the police operations during construction, the vacation of right-of-ways. There were other things that made this a little bit more complicated. And one of the things we don't like in government is risk. We like to be risk adverse. We like a lot of certainty. And I think there's more certainty here now that you can add as a benefit, in my mind, to the reduction of the financial gap. So I'm very much in favor of pursuing negotiation of this option. Certainly, no one would accept an offer right out of hand made to them, but I think it would be unwise not to pursue negotiations with LFI, as stated, for key terms for a potential redevelopment agreement. There's a lot to be worked out yet, but I don't see any reason, given sort of the factors I've outlined of where we were then and where we are today, that we shouldn't pursue option B. And then we'll see. As Amend mentioned, it's not committing us to anything. We're negotiating something, and we get to terms that everyone can agree upon, fantastic. If we don't, we don't. But I see no reason not to pursue option B in earnest. And again, it was a surprise to me too, but sometimes opportunities present themselves and you have to seize them. So I'm strongly in favor of pursuing option B, which is entering into negotiations, and we'll see where they lead us.
Based on the council conversation, we have 5 council members in support of pursuing option B, negotiate key terms with LFI at this point.
That would be correct. Commissioner Wallach.
Question for my colleagues. If during these negotiations in B, another offer comes in, are we going to turn it down? If it's equal or better?
Well, the short answer is I don't know, because I don't want to speculate. I think that we would negotiate in good faith with anyone and would do that in earnest and in good faith. But negotiations are negotiations. Until the parties have come to terms and binding terms, then we're not committed. And that goes both ways. But I would certainly represent that we would negotiate in good faith.
Well, what I'm getting at is, in the last go-round, LFI came in the middle of the whole process and offered another $1 million, and everybody was all upset. I don't know if we're going into option B and somebody else comes in with an equal or better offer, including a better land use, why we'd say, well, we're going to stick with B because that's our process.
And again,
that's what concerns me.
I'm not saying what would happen, because that would be speculation. All I'm saying that I would expect, like I would expect of anyone that we were in negotiations with, that both parties would do so in good faith, but until you're bound, you're not bound. And by the way, I would love to be upset by somebody throwing more millions of dollars at us.
Okay.
I'd love to get upset.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
If somebody comes in with a better deal, they come in with.
My reaction to people giving the taxpayers millions of dollars instead of them paying millions of dollars is far from being upset.
That's why I went BD 2, 4,
Sure.
whatever.
Right. Okay, then let me turn to the audience and see if there are any questions or comments from the audience. All right, stay tuned.
That ends
Thank
our mayor, or that is not in our mayor's report, that is the manager's report tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and I appreciate all my colleagues giving this deep thought. I know everybody did over the last week or so, and it's appreciated. And that brings us to item 10, which is the village attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. 3 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance amending certain stormwater provisions, an ordinance amending various sections of the municipal code concerning parking restrictions, and an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2019 budget in lieu of passage of an appropriation ordinance. That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11, which is reserved for council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to either report out on items of interest to the community or other goings-on in the community, or to report out on their role as liaisons to other public bodies. I'm going to exercise some executive prerogative tonight and go first because I actually have 2 other items to report out on of interest to those here. First, I want to let everyone know that next week on October 9th, we are going to have a presentation from a number of organizations, including the Humane Society of the United States, West Suburban Humane Society, as well as interested residents and perhaps some business owners, as possibly also the Chamber of Commerce, on the topic of a potential ordinance with respect to the sale of pets in the community, what's been sometimes referred to as a puppy mill ordinance. The ordinance is obviously more detailed than that, and I don't like to give it short shrift because there's more details to it than that. But we had a number of residents who reached out to various members of this council. They reached out to myself as mayor earlier about the concept, and I thought that similar to Tobacco 21 legislation, where we had interested groups and residents who wanted to make a presentation about the topic and invite the council to take it up potentially in some form by way of action by this body, that we would let everyone know that's going to be taking place next week. There will be a portion of our meeting up front where the representatives who are promoting the adoption of some sort of an ordinance on this topic will be allowed to present what they have in mind. We will have the benefit as a council to get some information on this in advance, including the model ordinance that has been identified by the Humane Society of the United States and area rescue groups. I will also let you know that I've reached out to Chamber 630 as the leaders of the business community to let them know that we're considering this, or there will be a presentation, I should say, about whether we consider this, and invited them to weigh in and provide input. So they're going to reach out to their network of businesses to see if there's a position that the chamber wants to take. Also, I will let you know that the owner of business in town on Ogden Avenue that would probably be most directly affected by any ordinance has also reached out to us, and I've explained to the business owner the same thing that I'm saying here now. So they will have an opportunity to attend next week as well and provide any input or participate in the process. Well, what I envision is that I believe we're going to have an official new business item that Commissioner Earl is bringing forward on this, so there will be a new business item on next week's agenda, but rather than wait until the end, we'll move it up front so that those that are here can speak to the issue and not have to wait all night. And then based on the information that we have between now and then, the presentations that evening, this council can decide what, if anything, we wish to direct staff to do. But nothing will be decided next week. At best, we would ask staff to do something further, and we'd workshop it at some future date. But I just want to let everyone know that's what's in the queue for next week. Second issue I wanted to mention was, as in my role as a District 3 municipal representative to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee, that committee met this morning, and 2 quick things I wanted to mention to the council and to the community. The countywide floodplain map update. This seems to have been going on forever, and frankly it has, but every now and then when something worthy of reporting out, when there's something worthy of reporting out, I'll report it out. The Illinois State Water Survey anticipates that letters of final determination, there's lots of acronyms here, so warning, if you don't like acronyms, plug your ears. Letters of final determination, or LFDs, will be issued by FEMA, F-E-M-A, on February 1st, 2019. The LFD notifies communities that flood hazard determinations are final and that the floodplain maps and FIS must be adopted by ordinance. So that gives us an idea when we're going to see the final floodplain maps and when we'll have to adopt those as a community. That will be in February of 2019. The LFD also provides the level of regulation required for continued NFIP participation and provides the map's effective dates. The effective dates for the new maps following adoption will be August 1st of 2019. That is 60 days later than the estimate that was earlier provided. There's a lot more information about some of the appeals and other matters affecting some other communities within DuPage County, but I will dispense with that. For our purposes, that's the timing. I know some residents were interested in when the maps would be finalized, and those are the dates that have been most recently announced. Last, I know that our fine Public Works Department is already on top of this, but the county also presented this morning a reminder of its water quality improvement program grants for fiscal 2019. Since 2000, Stormwater Management has had a water quality improvement program which makes about $300,000 a year available in grants for water quality improvement projects throughout DuPage County. And there was a presentation on those and how some communities have taken advantage of those programs to improve water quality in their communities. And if we are applying for any funds for any projects that the Village of Downers Grove might have in mind, the deadline for submittals is Friday, January 11th, 2019. I know that some of the projects I saw are certainly could translate into Downers Grove, but as usual, staff is probably a month ahead of me, and I'm just catching up now. Nan's smiling, so I know that's true. That's all I had on my report, so then I will turn things over to my colleagues. Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Earl.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner White.
No report.
Commissioner Wallace.
No report, Mayor, thank you.
Commissioner Waldeck.
No report.
Commissioner Jose.
Hate to be a spoiler, Mayor. Wanted to remind everybody about the Night at the Firehouse that's coming up Wednesday, October the 10th at Station 5, which is at 6701 Main Street, from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. There's an opportunity for kids to slide down a fire pole. You get to see an actual live burn and a comparison between a room that has sprinklers in it and a room that doesn't, which if you haven't seen it before, is pretty dramatic. You get to see firefighters do a rescue demonstration and extraction from a vehicle, which I've actually had the privilege of seeing from inside the vehicle, and I hope none of you ever have to do that. There's lots of fire apparatuses and other opportunities to learn about fire safety, and let the kids climb inside of the various ambulances and fire engines. So it's a great opportunity to learn a bit about fire safety and have some fun. And also coming up next Friday, and I'm sure there will be more reminders about this later on and next week, but it's the Silent Parade. It starts at about 7:15, goes from Hinsdale to Lyle, and comes right through Downers on Maple Avenue. It's a great opportunity to honor and pay respect to those who put their lives on the line every day and year for us, and remember those who unfortunately have given their last full measure of devotion. So a couple of things coming up, and I hope folks will take part in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that, Commissioner. And with that, we have concluded our business for the evening, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Until I move the council adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.